And we're live. Okay. So we have a pencil, we have a napkin, we have a fine line pen, we have a sign pen. And I picked out 3 to 5 markers just to get to know them really well. And I'm just going to start with the pencil. And building on some of our techniques from last week, I'm just going to freehand some boxes and freehand some shapes. So circles, ellipses, rectangles. Just continue to build up our visual acuity, hand-eye coordination between some squares, rectangles, and build our notion of how to start to get some free hand circles and ellipses. And you can see the entire arm is moving from the shoulder to the elbow to the entire hand. I'm not just moving the wrist, I'm moving the entire arm to try to freehand a very smooth elliptical shape. And then contrast that with the precision of a square or rectangle with lines that cross or overlap. So I'm just going to do a few of those, get comfortable, get loosened up, build on some of our previous work. Things can overlap. Just freely build on those skills from last week. Begin to build some freehand elliptical or circular shapes. We will use them in diagramming skills in this unit or this week. Okay, a few shapes going. Okay, now arrange. Now, let's take our markers. Now, if I had to arrange these from darkest to lightest shade, let's see, there, maybe to there, and yeah. So from lightest intensity or lightest shade to darkest shade. When we layer markers, particularly with landscape materials, we like to layer them from lightest to darkest. When you put a light marker on top of a dark marker, what's going to happen? just going to dissolve it again. But if you put darker markers on top of lighter markers, they will add to each other. They will add intensity and chroma. It's very hard to, well, try to put a light marker on top of a dark marker. So that starts to give us a little rule of thumb here that we want to go from light to dark in terms of shade or intensity. When we do layering, we want to keep that in mind. So I'll start with my lightest shade. I'm going to take the napkin now. Sometimes I have to unscrew the top with both hands like so. I'll take the tip, I'll take the head, and I will place it on the back here so I won't lose it. I'll take the napkin now and I'll wrap it around my non-dominant hand's pointer finger, so to create something like a pointer here. And I will start by doing the 4 sides of this box, and then overlap, 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 overlap. Take the bead of the marker, that's the wettest part of the liquid, I'll take it to the corner and then I'll pick it up. I have a few seconds to move around the wash if I want to even it out. But basically it's doing the 4 sides and then back and forth just like you're cutting a lawn. When you cut your lawn, you overlap each stride a little bit. I carry the bead to the corner and then I pick it up. It's a standard wash with the marker on tracing pad. On tracing pad, you've got basically 10 seconds before it really starts to dry.
It doesn't look like your marker's picking up any graphite.
I haven't touched the graphite. To close the marker, we place the tip on top and we let it fall. Just let it fall. Don't pile drive it into the table. Just let it fall gently, and that is enough, typically enough. If you pile drive it, it can be very difficult to get it back off again. So just let gravity allow the tip to affix back onto the barrel. Okay, I'll take my next color. And you can see, you can pick up some of the excess with the napkin there, if there is excess. experiment with some of my more intense colors. Darker colors is maybe the case. Oh, that's wet. That is really applying very wet. I'll use sign pen now and fine liner to sort of fill in, capture those lines. Just fill in the boxes, give them some confidence and shape. Just an exercise to get to know your markers and to do basic washes that are blended with the napkin. Try to create even layers of color.
Thanks for joining us here at commercial-free, listener-supported Radio Paradise.
So, it's just an exercise that allows you to confidently start to practice some different shapes, whether it be rectangles, circles, ellipses, in support of a couple of different line weights, and create an even wash that you can, within 10 seconds, you can blend in the marker stroke directly onto the paper. And on tracing pad in particular, it has the marker color doesn't tend to really absorb much into the paper. With bond paper and even with tracing roll, there's a higher absorption rate. On this Canson paper, it's a little bit stronger, and so the marker color tends to sit on top of the surface for a few more seconds before it evaporates into the air. And so it gives you a little bit of leeway in terms of moving around the wetter parts of the wash itself and even out the marker color. So, okay. Okay, the new sheet of tracing pad now. I've picked out two analogous colors. This is the goldenrod and the pale cherry. Analogous colors are colors that are close to each other on the color wheel. So we could switch it up here. We could pit the goldenrod against cad orange or cad red or peach, any one of those. I'm just interested in two colors that are very close to each other on the color wheel. I'm also going to have my fine liner and my sign pen handy. So, starting with the sign pen, we're going to try some line work now, where we hold the pen at 90 degrees, at roughly 45 degrees, and maybe even 20 degrees. A brand new sign pen, if it's new, not if it's old, but if it's a fairly new sign pen, will behave differently when it's held at those three general angles. Now I have to, of course, look at my collection now and see if I have a fairly new one. But at 90 degrees, the sign pen will perform with a fairly thin line weight. And that's, now you notice I can even hold the pen differently in order to achieve a 90-degree angle. Here is the pen with between the thumb, the forefinger, and the middle finger. The middle finger is basically supporting the bottom of the barrel, and that's what allows me to make a 90-degree mark. So just try a few 90-degree marks. When you're fairly comfortable with those. 45-degree angle is the fairly traditional piece. This in first grade, I was educated by a wonderful generation of World War II widows who said that there was only one way to hold a pencil or pen, and that was essentially a tripartite grip between the thumb, the forefinger, and the middle finger, where essentially the middle finger is supporting the barrel of the pen or pencil against between the nail and the knuckle. And folks who worked extensively in the environmental design industries will all have a callus right there because of the barrel of the pencil supporting the barrel of the pencil or pen. So at 45 degrees, with moderate pressure, you get another line weight. And adjusting the line weight with one pen means that you don't need to switch up pens very often. Jim Leggett can basically do all of his drawings with just sign pen for that reason. He can get 3 line weights out of the pen, then he doesn't have to switch up all the time. And so it increases his speed and efficiency. If we hold the pen at 20 degrees, we're essentially scraping the side of the tip of the pen, and we can drag it and get even a bolder line if we press it into the paper. Now here I'm holding it again differently. The bottom of the barrel of the pen is lodged into the space, the pit, if you will, between the forefinger and the thumb. And the entire pen is being supported by the forefinger and is resting against the middle finger. You can even push a great deal of the stroke and get a third line weight out of that. Depends if your pen is new or not. Sign pens tend to get softer as they get used. The felt tip tends to break down in its strength and ductility. Sometimes the felt tip tends to round a little bit. And as the pen starts to lose ink, it starts to perform differently. Well, as the pen starts to lose ink, it can be used as a shading pen. And so I'll put a piece of tape around the barrel and save it in my collection. And I'll remember that that's a shader. So we can actually add some nice gray shades to things. So with just that sign pen there, by holding it 3 different ways, we can start to get multiple line weights out of it. Now with the Pilot Fine Liner, same thing. If we were to apply 90, 45, and 20. If I hold the Pilot Fine Liner exactly at 90 degrees, I get a very fine line weight. If I hold it at 45 degrees, I get another line weight. And again, if I hold it at 20 degrees, I get a different character of a line. So just in the way that you hold the pen, you get different line weights or different characters of line. Now that's true for those brands. The reason it works that way is because the shape of that tip is a bullet-shaped tip. Okay? It tapers into a point for both the sign pen and for the Pilot Fine Liner. That's not true of all of your pen brands. You'll notice different pen brands here, if they are, depending on how they're shaped, how the tip is shaped, you're only getting one line of it. That's probably by design. But for sketching pens that like the sign pen, which is really was designed for executives to write your signature, or for a sketching pen like the Pilot Fine Liner. The bullet-shaped tip contributes to those different line weights based on how it's held. So if you examine the tip very closely, you'll see that bullet-shaped tip, that tapered conical shape that leads to different line weights when you hold it differently. So, getting to know the recommended pens, getting to know the conical shape or bullet shape felt tip pens, you can generate different line weights with the same pen. Similarly with the markers now. The AD marker can generate multiple line weights depending on how you hold it. So, I have 3 categories that I will refer to in the course. I will refer to the toe of the marker, I will refer to the heel of the marker, and I will refer to the chisel of the marker. Toe, heel, and chisel. Okay? Sounds like some sort of dance ritual, or otherwise, or line dancing, heaven forbid. If we look at the marker now, we can see that the finest line weight is achieved with the smallest surface area at the toe of the marker. There will be a secondary line weight that we can achieve with the heel of the marker, and a third line weight when we use the full chisel. So here we go. Toe, heel, chisel. I'll try that with a different color so that shows up better. Toe, heel, chisel. Toe, heel, chisel. All right, what did you notice? You notice you have to hold the marker differently. We have to hold the marker such that the toe is the only thing contacting the paper. With the heel, we have to turn the barrel so that only the heel of the marker is contacting the paper. And we turn it again, full chisel. And if you've got a bead, then you can pick it up, usually within a few seconds or otherwise. What we might discover is that if we're using the toe, we're probably at about 80 degrees to the page. If we're dragging the heel, we're about 20 or 30 degrees to the page. And if we're using the chisel, we're about 45 degrees to the page. So similar principle, the angle in which we hold the incident of the barrel to the paper yields a different line weight. But if you can achieve that, you can get 3 line weights on every marker. Okay? Not true for every brand, but some of your brands have different tips to them, right? The Prismacolor markers have 2 different tips at the end of the barrel, is that right? Yeah, so different brands have different approaches to them. Right? Is that right for Prismacolors? Yeah, it does.
It doesn't have as much of a deal.
Not as much of a deal? My deal looks like my deal. Similar, okay. Well, what this does for us could be very interesting. If you can get 3 line weights out of every marker, 3 line weights out of the sign pen, and 3 line weights out of the fine liner, what combination of line weights of your emphasis could you get? A bunch. 3 times 3 times 3. So that's a lot. When you're constructing a diagram, different levels of emphasis lead to different levels of hierarchy of readability when you're constructing a diagram. That variety of line weights is very valuable for us because they lead to different levels of readability and different levels of emphasis and hierarchy. So with the toe of the marker, with the heel of the marker, with the chisel of the marker, we can create different levels and reinforce those levels with line weights. Okay? So So this is a reference page. Now we need another page. Yes, we're going to go through a little bit of tracing paper this semester. So I've got two analogous colors, two colors that are close together on the color wheel, and then I've got two pens here. So between these things, we're going to generate stuff that has multiple line weights. Okay? So let's start with our lightest marker. I'm going to make the head of an arrow, and I'm going to drag an arc off of that. Is that showing up? Yes. Good. I'm going to make another arrow. Now I'm going to make a dash line. There's a little bit of space in between each one. This is a pretty brand new marker, so it's going to fill in with wetness here. So I'm just going to make some careful dashes here with the full chisel. I'm going to practice an arrow with the heel. Practice an arrow with just the toe. And just try to practice all three line weights with the marker just in terms of generating the body of some arrows. And we will continue to add additional line work to those. I can add some analogous color to that. Totally optional, but it does start to add some interest. Gives the arrow some dimension. Starts to make it look like a three-dimensional piece in space. Now, analogous color adds a little bit of three-dimensionality already to the color that's applied there. Similarly, is that a word? I don't know. Similarly, it is now. I'm going to build an asterisk with my light shade color. 3, 4. And if I have a bead of color, a wet bead, extra color, I'll just pick it up with the napkin there. I'll try an asterisk with just the heel. I'll try an asterisk with just the toe. And that secondary analogous color just creates a little bit of extra warmth or dimension to these figures. I'll let those dry a little bit, and I'll get my other two sketching pens ready now. Okay, now we can start to add some line work to our marker work here. I'll just zoom in a little bit on my reference here. So if we were to start to add now some line work around that arrowhead, we discover that the marker has helped us create this fairly consistent arc or shape. It is that method of drawing backwards, if you will. Instead of adding color to line work, we're actually generating the shape first and adding line work to the color. This is particularly helpful for symbols and arrows that are part of hand diagrams, whether we're diagramming different land uses or diagramming different functions or areas or demographics or activity areas. By adding the line work on top of or with the color, it leads to some clean shapes and part of a larger diagramming symbols library that we can build for use in the field. Line work doesn't have to be perfect. You can see as I'm drawing this line work, I'm following the general trail of the marker color, but I'm allowing a little bit of gaps here because my hand can only go so far before it wants to wiggle. And so there's some gaps, there's some imperfections there, but that adds to the character of the line or the character of that particular shape. For the dash ones, I add an emphasis to the negative space in between each of the dashes, and that creates a different line type. So that would take on a different meaning in the construction of a diagram. So that might mean a different type of path, a different mode of transportation, whatever, a different type of permeable edge. This different line type can lead to different meaning in the context of a diagram. The color is already there, and so therefore the line work should be more confident, should be more pleasant, more relaxed, because you're just following the outline of the trail of the marker. I'm going to change up the line weight here for this one, create some bolder line work with the sign pen, and you can see that the variation between the fine liner and the sign pen, even though it was the same type of arrow type, creates two different levels of emphasis. So a different level of meaning or hierarchy in the context of a future diagram. See the example in the PowerPoint. We can even use both line weights to create another level of hierarchy or emphasis. The fine liner and the sign pen actually can work together to create another level of emphasis. So if I add the sign pen to the body of this arrow, it actually creates even more emphasis. Hence the ability to create different levels of readability and hierarchy with just a few tools. As you can see in the example, we can even, if we wanted to, we could even start to introduce lettering or labeling within the context of that. Most charrettes that I've worked on recently, we don't like to letter or label a lot. We would prefer to label these drawings in Photoshop or InDesign. So we tend to prefer computer labeling and leader lines and things like that. But sometimes in the context of a fast diagram, you can even start to add a level of text even with the diagram shapes and symbols. As you might know, though, we are in CAP, and we are not known for our spelling. And so sometimes we can open ourselves to spelling errors and things like that. And clients tend to see those things first. So we do try to do our best to avoid those particular mistakes. But in this one, I'll add the fine liner to the so I'll just really kind of give a space for that arrow to exist in by adding the fine liner to the outside of it, and it gives it a different look. Is there a right way? I don't know. You just have to try this stuff out and determine what really feels good, and it becomes part of your personal modus operandi. It becomes part of the way that you start to do diagrams. So you just got to try these different things out and see what feels really good, what feels comfortable. Finally, I'm going to take an analogous colored pencil. So analogous, again, analogous meaning a colored pencil that is within the same realm of the color wheel as the colors I've been working with. And I'm just going to add a little bit more warmth to that. Kind of wedge that in there and just kind of warm up that whole thing. What it starts to do is just kind of blend in the two previous marker colors together, kind of merge them a little bit. Just adds more character to the shape or symbol. Covers up any gaps or mistakes you might have made. And gives our shapes and symbols almost a gradient feel, so kind of like the gradient textures that you start to see in Adobe Illustrator and the shapes and symbols that are part of logos and icons in Adobe Illustrator. So an analogous colored pencil just kind of fills in any mistakes or gaps that we might have to really give that shape or symbol some life. Hopefully you can see they're almost kind of lifting off the paper. I mean, these things are really take on a life of their own. Whether you're using warm colors or cool colors, these things, in the context of a larger diagram now, you have now a sense of how to create different levels of emphasis and hierarchy across a series of shapes or washes or land areas or land use areas or other sort of land forms. So. Okay. Just starting with pencil now, we will reference one of the functional diagrams that are available in our PowerPoint, slide 41, 42, or 43. References different functional diagrams. They can refer to different areas or uses. So I'm just going to start in pencil, just the general path of some maybe a river. Maybe an open space. Maybe a shape. Could be a circle or an ellipse or an egg to represent those different uses. And just maybe another circle or ellipse just on the other side there. We need to remind ourselves there has to be a connection from one side to the other or through an area. If we're interested in that kind of networking, we're just kind of replicating the diagram you see there. Need a reminder that there needs to be connections from one land use to another. So once we just lightly sketch in those, I'm going to recreate them just for the benefit of the camera. I'm going to recreate them in a little bit of a warmer color, just for the benefit of the camera. Yeah. Now we can start laying in some marker color. So remember, we have to go from light to dark, or less intense to intense. So, and we also have to think about layer and hierarchy. So we are referencing one of the diagrams, in this case slide 42, might be slide 41 or 43, depending on where it is. I'm going to take a light blue, it could be crystal blue or sky blue, and I'm going to create an arrowhead at the bottom of that river line, carry it up just before the break, make a break, because we're going to put a bridge over that, so, and then follow that general line that we've made there, then create another arrowhead at the far end. And I'll do that. I'll layer that in. I can put in a second layer of color if I want, if I'm interested in that. Or I can pick up the bead of the color if I need to. There's a bead. That's a bead, by the way. Bead of color is a excess of liquid that builds up underneath the tip of the marker. So I've locked in that blue, that light blue representing our river. Okay. Now let's take a green, preferably a lighter green. I'm going to pick out my yellow green first. Now this open space might actually be a more permeable edge or less defined edge, so I'm not going to be married to the idea of a single space. This might be more of a rough textured. I'll take a second green and layer that in. Or even add secondary. Okay. Residential is yellow, just in terms of land use colors, so I just kind of lay in some yellow, and I don't need to cover up the whole area though. You'll notice there's a little bit of a highlight there, right? We don't need to cover up the whole thing. You can, but it looks, a little bit flat. So don't feel that you need to fill in the entire area full of color. You can leave a little bit of a gap there. That's what that effect is starting to go for. Don't feel you need to cover up the whole thing if you don't want to.
Might buy one marker.
gonna work. Okay. Now I'll put in my arrows. You can even start to add things to the diagram as you wish. These should be yours, not mine.